Hi guys, good evening. Today we are going to read the tissues lesson chapter 6 from the class 9th biology. So tissues. For example, in amoeba, a single cell carries out movement. Intake of food and respiratory gases, respiration and excretion is taken by a single cell. Most of these cells are specialized to carry out a few functions. In the plants, vascular tissues conduct food and water from one part of the plant to the other parts. This means that a particular function is carried out by a cluster of cells at a definite place in the body. This cluster of cells, called a tissue, is arranged and designed so as to give the highest possible efficiency of function. A group of cells that are similar in structure and are work together to achieve a particular function forms a tissue. There are noticeable differences between the two. Plants are stationary or fixed. They don't move. Most of the tissues, they are supportive, which provides them with structural strength. Most of these tissues are dead, since dead cells can provide mechanical strength. Based on the dividing capacity of the tissues, various plant tissues can be classified as growing or meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. Cell growth in animals is more uniform, so there is no such demarcation of dividing and non-dividing regions in animals. First of all, we look at the plant tissues. In plant tissues, we read about meristematic tissue. They are growing tissues. The growth of plants occurs only in certain specific regions. This is because the dividing tissue, also known as meristematic tissue, is located only at these points. Depending on the region where they are present, meristematic tissues are classified as apical, lateral, and intercalary. So there are three types of meristematic tissues. First of all, apical meristematic tissue, intercalary meristematic tissue, next lateral meristematic tissue. Location of meristematic tissue in plant body. First, apical meristematic tissue. Apical meristem is present at the growing tip of stems, roots, and increases the length of the stem and the root. The grit of the stem or the root increases due to lateral meristem, that is cambium. Intercalary meristem is the meristem at the base of the leaves or internodes on either side of the node on twigs. So, the apical meristem, where it is present at the growing tip of stems and roots. And the apical meristem is the main reason to increase the length of stem and root. The grit of the stem or root increases due to lateral meristem. Due to the lateral meristem, the grit of the stem or root increases. Lateral meristem is also called cambium. Next, intercalary meristem is the meristem at the base of the leaves or internodes on either side of the node on twigs, that is intercalary meristem. Next, as the cells of this tissue are very active, they have dense cytoplasm, thin cellulose, and prominent nuclei. They lack vacuoles. So the meristematic tissues have very active, these cells are very active, they have dense cytoplasm, thin cellulose wall, very thin, and the cytoplasm is very dense, and there is a prominent nuclei, but they lack vacuoles. In the meristematic tissue. Next, permanent tissue. What happens to the cells formed by meristematic tissue? They take up a specific role and lose the ability to divide. As a result, they form a permanent tissue. This process of taking up of permanent shape, size, and a function is called differentiation. Cells of the meristematic tissue differentiate to form different types of permanent tissues. Next, simple permanent tissue. Few layers of cells form the basic packing tissue. This tissue is parenchyma, a type of permanent tissue. It consisting of relatively unspecialized cells within the thin cell walls. They are live cells. They are usually loosely packed, so that large spaces between the cells, that is intercellular spaces, are found in these tissues. So, there are permanent tissues. Within the permanent tissues, there are many types, like simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. There are two types of tissues in the permanent tissue of a plant cell. So, if you look at the simple permanent tissue, the simple permanent tissue is a basic packing tissue. This tissue is parenchyma, a type of permanent tissue. It consists of relatively unspecialized cells within the cell walls, with thin cell walls. These parenchyma cells are unspecialized cells and they have thin cell walls. They are live cells. They are usually loosely packed, so that large spaces between the cells, that is intercellular spaces, are found in this tissue. This tissue provides support to plants and also stores food. So this parenchyma tissue provides support to plants and also stores food, and they have large intercellular spaces. They are loosely packed and thin cell walls. In some situations, it contains chlorophyll and performs photosynthesis. And then it is called chlorenchyma. In aquatic plants, large air cavities are present in parenchyma to give buoyancy to the plants to help them float. Such a parenchyma type is called aerenchyma. The parenchyma of stems and roots also stores nutrients and water. In aquatic plants, large air cavities are present in parenchyma to give buoyancy to the plants to help them float. Such a parenchyma type is called aerenchyma. Such a parenchyma type is called aerenchyma. Aerenchyma means they are the type of parenchymatic tissue to give buoyancy to the plants. The parenchyma of stems and roots also stores nutrients and water. Parenchyma of stems and roots also stores nutrients and water. The flexibility of plants is due to another permanent tissue, that is collenchyma. The collenchyma will give the flexibility. Chlorenchyma performs the photosynthesis. Aerenchyma gives the buoyancy. Collenchyma is the flexibility is due to another permanent tissue. It allows easy bending in various parts of a plant, that is leaf, stem, without breaking. It also provides mechanical support to plants. We can find this tissue in leaf stalks below the epidermis. The cells of this tissue are living, elongated, and irregularly thickened at the corners. There is very little intercellular space. Very little intercellular spaces. So, if you look at the collenchyma, it gives the flexibility to the plants. It is another simple permanent tissue. It gives flexibility to the plant. It allows easy bending of various plants without breaking. It gives mechanical support. And we found this collenchyma in leaf stalks below the epidermis. The cells of this tissue are living. Collenchyma are living and elongated, irregularly thickened at the corners. And they have very little intercellular spaces. So, if you look at the figure 6.4, various types of simple tissues are there. First, a parenchyma. A parenchyma, there is a large intercellular spaces and loosely packed cells. If you look at the picture, we see, and they are live cells. Mm, They are used to store food, and their cell walls are very thin. So parenchyma. Next, if you look at the collenchyma, B collenchyma, no intercellular spaces, and there is a irregularly thickened at the corners. You look at that. And very little intercellular spaces. There is no maximum. Cells of tissues are living and elongated. Collenchyma. Next, sclerenchyma. If you look at another type of permanent tissue is sclerenchyma. It is the tissue that which makes the plant hard and stiff. We have seen the husk of a coconut. It is made of sclerenchymatous tissue. The cells of this tissue are dead. They are long and narrow. The walls are thickened due to lignin, a chemical substance, which acts as a cement and hardens them. Often these walls are so thick that there is no internal space inside the cell. This tissue is present in stems, around vascular bundles, in the veins of leaves, and in the hard covering of seeds and nuts. It provides strength to the plant parts. So, if you look at the sclerenchyma tissue, the sclerenchyma tissues are hard, elongated, dead cells. They are found at the husk of a coconut. Stiff, they are sclerenchyma tissue. They are long and narrow, thickened due to lignin, a chemical substance which acts as a cement and hardens them. Walls are so thick that there is no internal space inside the cell. The tissue is present in stems, around vascular bundles, in the veins of leaves, the hard covering of seeds and nuts. It provides strength to the plant parts. What you observe is the outermost layer of cells. What you observe is the outermost layer of cells called epidermis. The epidermis is usually made up of single layer of cells. In some plants living in very dry habits. So, another simple permanent tissues are epidermis cells. Epidermis is made up of single layer of cells. In some plants living in very dry habits, the epidermis may be thicker since protection against water loss is critical. The entire surface of a plant has this outer covering of epidermis. It protects all the parts of the plant. Epidermal cells on the aerial parts of the plant often secretes a waxy, water-resistant layer on their outer surface. This aids in protection against loss of water, mechanical injury, and invasion by parasitic fungi. Since it has a protective role to play, cells of epidermal tissue form a continuous layer without intercellular spaces. Most epidermal cells are relatively flat. Often their outer and side walls are thicker than the inner wall. What you observe is the outermost layer of cells called epidermis. The epidermis is usually made up of a single layer of cells. In most plants living in very dry habits, epidermis may be thicker since protection against water loss is critical. The entire surface of a plant has this outer covering of epidermis. It protects all the parts of the plant. Epidermal cells on the aerial parts of the plant often secretes a waxy, water-resistant layer on their outer surface. This aids in protection against loss of water, mechanical injury, and invasion by parasitic fungi. This aids in protection against loss of water, mechanical injury, and invasion by parasitic fungi. Since it has a protective role to play, cells of epidermal tissue forms a continuous layer without intracellular spaces. Most epidermal cells are relatively flat. Often their outer and side walls are thicker than the inner walls. Often their outer and side walls are thicker than the inner walls. We can observe small pores here and there in the epidermis of the leaf. These pores are called stomata. Stomatas are enclosed by two kidney-shaped cells called guard cells. They are necessary for exchanging gases with the atmosphere. Transportation loss of water in the form of water vapor also takes place through stomata. Think about which gas may be required for photosynthesis. Find out the role of transpiration in plants. Epidermal cells of the roots, whose function is water absorption, commonly bear long hair-like parts that greatly increase the total absorbed surface area. In some plants like desert plants, epidermis has a thick waxy coating of cutin, chemical substances with waterproof quality on its outer surface. It is the outer layer of a branch of a tree different from the outer layer of a young stem. As plants grow older, the outer protective tissue undergoes certain changes. A strip of secondary meristem replaces the epidermis of the stem. Cells on the other side are cut off from this layer. This forms the several layer thick cork or the bark of the tree. Cells of cork are dead and compactly arranged without intercellular spaces. They also have a chemical called suberin in their walls that makes them impervious to gases and water. So, cork cells, ruptured epidermis, protective tissue. This is epidermis. Complex permanent tissue. Next, simple permanent tissue. There is a complex permanent tissue. Okay, the simple permanent tissue is over. Next permanent tissue, one type is complex permanent tissue. The different types of tissues we have discussed until now are all made up of one type of cells, which look like each other. Such tissues are called simple permanent tissue. Yet another type of permanent tissue is complex tissue. Complex tissues are made up of more than one type of cells. As all these cells coordinate to perform a common function. Xylem and phloem are examples of such complex tissues. They are both conducting tissues and constitute a vascular bundle. Vascular or conductive tissue is a distinctive feature of the complex plants, one that has made possible their survival in the terrestrial environment. In figure 6.3, showing a section of stem, can you see different type of cells in the vascular bundle? Xylem consisting of tracheids, vasils, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. The cells have thick walls, and many of them are dead cells. Tracheids and vessels are tubular structures. This allows them to transport water and minerals vertically. The parenchyma stores food and helps in sideways conduction of water. Fibers are mainly supportive in function. Phloem is made up of five types of elements: sieve tubes, companion cells, sieve cells, phloem fibers, and phloem parenchyma. Sieve tubes are tubular cells with perforated walls. Phloem is unlike xylem in that material can move in both directions. Next, phloem transports food from leaves to other parts of the plant. Except for phloem fibers, phloem cells are living cells. Xylem consists of tracheids, basals, and xylem parenchyma and xylem fibers. The cells have thick walls, and many of them are dead cells. Tracheids and vessels are tubular structures. This allows them to transport water and minerals vertically. The parenchyma stores food and helps in the sideways conduction of water. Fibers mainly support in function. Next, animal tissues. During breathing, we inhale oxygen. Where does this oxygen go? It is absorbed in the lungs and then is transported to all the body cells through blood. Blood flows and carries various substances from one part of the body to other. For example, it carries oxygen and food to all cells. It also collects waste from all parts of the body and carries them to the liver and kidney for disposal. Blood and muscles are both examples of tissues found in our body. On the basis of the functions they perform, we can think of different types of animal tissues, such as epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissues, and nervous tissues. Blood is a type of connective tissue, and muscle forms muscular tissues. So, different type of animal tissues. In animal tissues, we have epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscular tissues, nervous tissues. Four type of tissues. First, blood is a connective tissue, and muscles are from the muscular tissues. First, we talk about the epithelial tissue. The covering or protective tissues in the animal body are epithelial tissues. Epithelium covers most organs and cavities within the body. It also forms a barrier to keep different body systems separate. The skin, the lining of the mouth, the lining of blood vessels, lung alveoli, and kidney tubules are all made up of epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissue cells are tightly packed and form a continuous sheet. So, wherever we found epithelial tissues, the skin, lining of the mouth, lining of blood vessels, lung alveoli, kidney tubules, these all these parts we found the epithelial tissue. They have only a small amount of cementing material between them and almost no intercellular space. Obviously, anything entering, leaving the body, must cross at least one layer of epithelium. As a result, the permeability of the cells of various epithelia play an important role in regulating the exchange of materials between the body and the external environment, and also between different parts of the body. Regardless of the type, all epithelium is usually separated from the underlying tissue by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. All epithelium is usually separated from the underlying tissue by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. Different epithelia show differing structures that correlate with their unique functions. For example, in cells lining blood vessels or lung alveoli, where transportation of substances occurs through a selectively permeable surface. There is a simple flat kind of epithelium. This is called simple squamous epithelium. So, permeability of cells of various epithelia play an important role in regulating the exchange of material between the body and the external environment. It also acts between different parts of the body, regardless of the type. All epithelium is usually separated from the underlying tissue by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. Different epithelia show different structures that correlate with their unique functions. For example, in cells lining blood vessels or lung alveoli, where transportation of substances occurs through a selectively permeable surface. There is a simple flat kind of epithelium, that is simple squamous epithelium. So look at this. Where we find simple squamous epithelium, wherever the lining of the blood vessels, lung alveoli. At those parts, we found simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelial cells are extremely thin and flat, and form a delicate lining. The vasophagus and the lining of the mouth are also covered with squamous epithelium. The skin, which protects the body, is also made of squamous epithelium. Skin epithelial cells are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear. Since they are arranged in pattern of layers, the epithelium is called stratified squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelial cells are extremely thin and flat and form a delicate lining. The vasophagus and the lining of the mouth are also covered with squamous epithelium. Vasophagus and lining of the mouth are also covered with squamous epithelium. They are thin and flat squamous epithelium. The skin, which protects the body, is also made up of squamous epithelium. Skin epithelial cells are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear. Since they are arranged in a pattern of layers, the epithelium is called stratified squamous epithelium. Skin epithelial cells are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear. Since they are arranged in the pattern of layers, the epithelium is called stratified squamous epithelium. Where absorption and secretion occurs, as in the inner lining of the intestine, tall epithelial cells are present. This columnar, meaning pillar-like epithelium, facilitates movement across the epithelial barrier. In the respiratory tract, the columnar epithelial tissue also has cilia, which are hair-like projections on the outer surface of epithelial cells. These cilia can move, and their movement pushes the mucus forward to clear it. This type of epithelium is the ciliated columnar epithelium, where absorption and secretion occurs. As the inner lining of the intestine, tall epithelial cells are present. As the inner lining of the intestine, tall epithelial cells are present. epithelial cells are present. This columnar, meaning pillar-like epithelium, facilitates movements across the epithelial barrier. In the respiratory tract, the columnar epithelial tissue also has cilia, which are hair-like projections on the outer surface of epithelial cells. These cilia can move, and their movement pushes the mucus forward to clear it. This type of epithelium is the ciliated columnar epithelium. And their movement pushes the mucus forward to clear it. This type of epithelium is the ciliated columnar epithelium. Next, cuboidal epithelium. With cube-shaped cells, forms the lining of kidney tubules and ducts of salivary glands, where it provides mechanical support. Epithelial cells often acquire additional specialization as gland cells, which can secrete substances at the epithelial surface. Sometimes a portion of the epithelial tissue folds inward and a multicellular gland is formed. This is called glandular epithelium. Glandular epithelium. Cuboidal epithelium with cube-shaped cells formed in the lining of kidney tubules. In kidney tubules and the ducts of salivary glands, we find cuboidal epithelium. In the inner lining of the intestine, we find columnar epithelial tissues. Where we find columnar epithelial tissue, inner lining of the intestine, we find those. And cuboidal epithelium we find in the salivary ducts of the salivary glands and lining of the kidney tubules. We find cuboidal epithelium, where it provides mechanical support. Epithelial cells often acquire additional specialization as gland cells, which can secrete substances at the epithelial surface. Sometimes a portion of the epithelial tissue folds inwards and a multicellular gland is formed. This is glandular epithelium. Next, connective tissue. Blood is a type of connective tissue. Why would it be called connective tissue? A clue is provided in the introduction of this chapter. Now, let us look at this type of tissue in some more detail. The cells of connective tissue are loosely spaced and embedded in an intercellular matrix. The matrix may be jelly-like, fluid, dense, or rigid. The nature of matrix differs in concordance with the function of the particular connective tissues. So, the cells of connective tissues are loosely packed, embedded in an intercellular matrix. The matrix may be jelly-like, fluid, dense, and rigid. The nature of matrix differs in concordance with the function of the particular connective tissue. Blood has a fluid, liquid matrix called plasma, in which red blood cells RBCs and white blood cells WBCs and platelets are suspended. So blood has a fluid matrix called plasma. Plasma is there in the blood, in which in the plasma we find RBCs, WBCs and platelets are suspended in the plasma. The plasma contains proteins, salts and hormones. Blood flows and transports gases. Blood flows and transports gases, digested food, hormones, and waste material to different parts of the body. and flows and transports gases, digested food, hormones, waste material to different parts of the body. Bone is another example of connective tissue. It forms the framework that supports the body. It also anchors the muscles and supports the main organs of the body. It is a strong and non-flexible tissue. Bone cells are embedded in a hard matrix that is composed of calcium and phosphorus compounds. Bone cells are embedded in a hard matrix that is composed of calcium and phosphorus compounds. Next, two bones can be connected to each other by another type of connective tissue called ligament. Two bones can be connected to each other by another type of connective tissue called the ligament. The tissue is very elastic. It has considerable strength. So, two bones are connected via ligament. The tissue is very elastic. It has considerable strength. Ligaments contain very little matrix. Tendons connect muscles to bones. Another type another type of connective tissue. Tendons are fibrous tissues with great strength but limited flexibility. Tendons are fibrous tissues with great strength but limited flexibility. Another type of connective tissue is cartilage, has widely spaced cells. The solid matrix is composed of proteins and sugars. Cartilage soothes bone surface at joints and is also present in the nose, ear, trachea, and larynx. Another type of connective tissue, that is cartilage, has widely spaced cells. The solid matrix is composed of proteins and sugars. Cartilage smoothens bone surfaces at joints and is also present in the nose, ear, trachea, and larynx. We can fold the cartilage of the ears, but we cannot bend the bones in our arms. Think of how the two tissues are different. Cartilage or connective tissue is found between the skin and muscles, around blood vessels and nerves, and in the bone marrow. It fills a space inside the organs, supports internal organs, and helps in repair of tissues. Where are fats stored in our body? Fat storing adipose tissue is found below the skin and between the internal organs. The cells of this tissue are filled with fat globules. Storage of fats also lets it act as an insulator. Another type of connective tissue is cartilage. Next, we talk about muscular tissues. Muscular tissue consisting of elongated cells, also called muscle fibers. This tissue is responsible for movement in our body. Muscles contain special proteins called contractile proteins, which contract and relax to cause movement. We can move some muscles by conscious will. Muscles present in our limbs move when we want them to and stop when we so decide. Such muscles are called voluntary muscles. These muscles are also called skeletal muscles as they are mostly attached to bones and help in body movements. Under the microscope, these muscles show alternate light and dark bands or striations when stained appropriately. As a result, they are also called striated muscles. The cells of this tissue are long, cylindrical, unbranched, and multinucleate, having many nuclei. The movement of food in the alimentary canal or the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels are involuntary movements. We cannot really start them or stop them simply by wanting to do so. Smooth muscles or involuntary muscles control such movements. They are also found in the iris of the eye, in uterus, and in the bronchi of the lungs. The cells are long with pointed ends, spindle shaped, and uninucleate, having a single nucleus. They are also called unstriated muscles. Why would they be called that? The muscles of the heart show rhythmic contraction and relaxation throughout life. These involuntary muscles are called cardiac muscles. Heart muscle cells are cylindrical, branched, and uninucleate. Heart muscle cells are cylindrical, branched, and uninucleate. So, if you look at the muscular tissues are elongated cells, also called muscular tissues, also called muscular fibers. They are elongated tissues, and their muscles contain special proteins. These proteins are called contractile proteins, which cause contract and relax to cause the movement. They have the contractile proteins. The muscle cells, muscle tissues, muscle fibers have contractile proteins. So there are voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. Voluntary muscles are when we decide to move, they will move automatically. They are voluntary muscles. But when automatically, without our decision, the movement will occur. It is called involuntary movements. Involuntary muscles, involuntary movement. Next, the movement of food in our alimentary canal. If we take an example, the contraction, relaxation of blood vessels are involuntary movements. We cannot really start them or stop them simply by wanting them to do so. They are smooth muscles or involuntary muscles control such movements. Okay. These are also found in our iris of the eye and in the urethra and in the bronchi of the lungs. We found these involuntary muscles. The cells are long and pointed ends, spindle shaped, and uninucleate, having a single nucleus. They are also called unstriated muscles. Striated muscles. B. Smooth muscles. C. Cardiac muscles. The muscles of the heart show rhythmic contraction and relaxation throughout life. These involuntary muscles are called cardiac muscle. These involuntary muscles are called cardiac muscles. Heart muscle cells are cylindrical, branched, and uninucleate. Heart muscle cells are cylindrical, branched, and uninucleate. The muscles of the heart show rhythmic contraction and relaxation throughout life. These involuntary muscles are called cardiac muscles. Next, nervous tissues. All cells possess the ability to respond to stimuli. However, cells of the nervous tissue are highly specialized for being stimulated and then transmitting the stimulus very rapidly from one place to the another within the body. The brain, spinal cord, and nerves are all composed of the nervous tissues. The cells of this tissue are called nerve cells or neurons. A neuron consisting of a cell body within a nucleus and cytoplasm, from which long, thin, hair-like parts arise. Usually, each neuron has a single long part called the axon and many short branched parts called dendrites. An individual nerve cell may be up for a meter long. Many nerve fibers bound together by connective tissue make up a nerve. So, if you look at the nerve tissues are used to transmitting a stimulus. Nerve tissues are in the brain to spinal cord and the nerves all composed of the nervous tissues. And nerve tissues are made up of nerve cells or neurons. And usually a neuron consisting of a cell body with single nucleus. There is a nucleus and also the cytoplasm. That is a neuron usually. It also has a long thin hair-like parts arrays. Long thin hair-like part, there is a part. Usually each neuron has a single long part called the axon and many short branched parts called the dendrites. So long part called the axon and many short parts called the dendrites. An individual nerve cell may be up for a meter long. Many nerve fibers bound together by a connective tissue make up a nerve. Nerve impulse allow us to move our muscles when we want to. The functional combination of nerve and the muscle tissue is fundamental to most animals. This combination enables animals to move rapidly in response to stimuli. So, this is end to our lesson tissues.